22 часа 28 минут. Масса...
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Dragon deploy verified.
Welcome to Spacevidcast 5.14 for September 8th, 2012. My name is Benjamin Higginbotham. With me, as always, the beautiful, lovely, wonderful, and talented Carrie Ann Higginbotham. Now, normally we get straight into space news because I know you guys have just watched like a 500-minute open. We really need to make that shorter, don't we? By like most of it. But I did want to say one quick thing. If you've been watching our shows on YouTube, you'll note that sometimes they're delayed for weeks. Weeks and weeks and weeks. This is not our fault. We post them to YouTube right away.
Right.
The problem is that YouTube has this new automatic copyright system that does not work. Straight up, it says that, you know, like, for example, a couple shows ago, The Ellen Show had copyright on our show, and there was nothing in our show that was aired on Ellen. So, and I don't blame The Ellen Show for that. That's obviously an automated YouTube problem. So, with the help of Spacevidcaster Pete Reset, hopefully I'm pronouncing his last name right. I guess I never asked how it's really pronounced. We have implemented blip.tv support on Spacevidcast. The beautiful thing about Blip is it doesn't have the same copyright issue. So we can still upload our episodes, and you'll have them right away. So we're not going to stop uploading to YouTube. We're going to continue uploading there. However, there may be times when our episodes are delayed by 3+ weeks simply because YouTube decided to mark them as copyright infringement, and we're waiting for them to clear the copyright. Understand, we're not the only ones that have this issue. It happened to the Curiosity video that NASA posted as well, but there's a big difference between NASA and us. NASA was able to get the copyright cleared within an hour. Our stuff takes weeks, and I have yet to find the person to talk to at YouTube. So, point of this is, if you really want to see these episodes in a timely fashion, go to spacevidcast.com. We'll have them posted like right away, right there. We always have, as best we could. If you really want to watch them on YouTube, that's awesome, that's fine. You know, just hit the subscribe button that's over here somewhere, whatever it is. And the more subscribers we have, the more pull we have with YouTube. And hopefully, if we can get enough subscribers, when we have copyright claims that are wrong, we can call up YouTube and be like, dude, we have 4.5 kajillion subscribers, clear this copyright claim right now. And they'll still say, no, F off. So, all right. So there's my quick little YouTube note. Let's get into space news. There was an Atlas V launch that was carrying the twin radiation belt storm probes. And since we're a space show, we'll show you the launch really quickly, and then we'll talk about the probes. So here you go.
10. 5. Release.
Lift off the Atlas V rocket and twin spacecraft on a mission to unlock the mysteries of Earth's Van Allen belts.
Our engine continues to perform well. Pump speeds within parameters. Injector pressures are stable. This one used on close-up control. And we throttled that. Copy, or correction that we did not throttle back. The roll program is complete. Coming up on max Q, body rates continue to look good. Max Q.
So, all right. As they mentioned in the chat room, and I was actually going to bring this up, they're too cool to do a full countdown launch.
Yeah.
Probably copyright issue on using all of the numbers in the copyright.
I just figured that people were just so bored they fell asleep.
So
because even the announcer's like, what? Yes, so it's launched. It's good.
So I don't know if it was NASA that was doing the countdown or United Launch Alliance, but I implore you, it's like the most interesting, it's like the part where you're on the edge of your seat. You can fill in the gaps. You are capable of counting one number per second. I know this because everyone else does it. I ask you kindly, please use all the numbers. All right, that should be the topic. That will be the
Next
title of
week's
this
main
episode. Please use all the numbers.
numbers.
All right. That aside, it was a nice, clean launch. It was there were a couple. It was like the third launch attempt. It scrapped a couple times. This is for some satellites that are going to go up. They're going to be looking at the radiation through the Van Allen belts, looking at the sun's influence here on the Earth.
Which are located where? The Van Allen belt?
They're
I mean, they're in space, but I mean, they're between...
Earth and the Moon.
Okay.
Was that important?
I figure some people don't know.
Oh, I just kind of, maybe I incorrectly assumed that people knew what the Van Allen belts were, right? Even the UFO conspiracists or the non-landing conspiracists use the Van Allen belts as like proof, whatever it is. So here's another really cool thing that's coming up. Well, I guess it already happened. So
Yeah.
well, it's leading. You talk about it. I'm just screwing this up.
Wow. Okay. So SpaceX recently had what's called a wet dress rehearsal, or wet dress for short, because apparently rehearsal is just entirely too long to enunciate. And what that is there is a launch coming up scheduled for early October for SpaceX, and a wet dress rehearsal is getting the vehicle basically together for the most part, making sure it's got all of its liquids, which is why they call it wet dress. So they fuel it up and they set it up as if they were going to launch. It may not be 100% thoroughly the vehicle put all together. What am I trying to say here? This is what happens when you're on Dayquil. It has enough of the elements that are in place to help verify that the rocket is ready to go. And then they light it up and they hold it for a couple of seconds to make sure that there aren't any issues, making sure that everything is working properly, it's all connected, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, when you say light it up, the engines never fire.
Oh, I thought they did.
No, they do not fire.
I'm so sorry.
No.
Really?
No firing of engines on a wet dress.
Okay. Apparently I'm really, really wrong, but it's a test thereof.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Anyhow, SpaceX had one because they have a scheduled launch in October, and so it's one of those steps that everyone goes through, or at least they should go through, just to make sure that everything is working properly.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So that's a good sign when a rocket company does a wet dress.
And it went really well, by the way. They didn't just do it and it was whatever, but it went really well as well. So, yay.
By the way, we know we've made it when, because I don't talk about SpaceX at all.
Right.
You'll notice I always hand those to Carrie.
Right, but so Ben says, hey, can you talk about this wet dress? And I'm like, yeah, of course I can talk about a wet dress. I clearly know what a wet dress is, which apparently I don't, so there's that. But just in case, I went to Wikipedia and I looked up wet dress rehearsal. And if you go to wikipedia.org/wiki/wet_dress_rehearsal, also known as a WDH for some unknown reason, one of the references is to Spacevidcast Space Pod.
We're famous.
Wet dress rehearsal.
We are now a wiki reference. So that just goes to show there's no quality in wiki. All right. So speaking of vehicles, ATK was not part of the CCI cap or the commercial crew funding from NASA.
Right.
And they had developed this Liberty rocket. And the first stage, the part with all the cool paint on the left-hand side, that was a 5-segment solid rocket motor. Then the next stage was an Arion stage from Arion Space. And the final stage was a composite crew vehicle that they were going to kind of develop. And NASA was basically like, yeah, no. So now it sounds like if you hit the bit.ly link right down here, I haven't actually heard ATK say we are scrubbing Liberty.
No.
I have not heard those words yet.
I heard that they are moving forward, as a matter of fact.
I heard they are moving on. So the words I heard were moving on.
Suppose, yeah, no, you're right.
Right?
You're right.
So that
Moving
means
on.
to me, no more Liberty.
Right.
And so a lot of people are not necessarily huge Solid fans. And we look at the Ares 1, and a lot of people, myself included, looked at Ares 1 and kind of went, I don't understand. But the reason I didn't understand Ares 1 is because they were building a brand new rocket when we already had good rockets that would have.
Right.
The thing with Liberty was ATK was paying for it out of pocket. And so this was another contender in the space industry, and more competition is good. And so I'm sad to see ATK let it go. I don't necessarily I mean, I understand, it makes sense. But at the same time, if they have the ability to fund it out of pocket, I would love to see Liberty fly.
Totally.
Even if it's a little bit slower than it initially would have been, if they really feel it was a viable product, then you're so close. You've got the first stage. The second stage is already human rated. They need to make the Vulcan engine relightable,
right.
or a vacuum engine. But I mean, and that's not trivial. But that can be done. And then, at least to fly those two components. And the last stage was, a lot of that was done-ish as well.
Right.
So, I'd really love to see Liberty fly. Anyhow, that's the story with Liberty. It sounds like it will be a no-go. It will never fly. But that's not to say that ATK is completely out of the game entirely. In fact, quite the opposite. ATK, Alliant Tech Systems, they're the ones who make a majority of the solid fuel you see in the vehicles. So the space shuttle, when you see the 2 solid tanks on either side, those were done by ATK. They are now testing a new Delta IV solid rocket motor. And check this out. We're a video show, so we have this.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Dude, those things are powerful.
Yeah, it's crazy to watch those kinds of things. Really beautiful.
A couple other really quick things before we go into break. One I just thought was really cool is that we'll just touch on really quickly. Space Shuttle Endeavour is scheduled to come to California actually, I'll just throw the graphics up. I wasn't even going to do that, but boom, there you go. Space Shuttle Endeavour. The final flight itinerary. I will give you a quick moment to talk about Endeavour and the trees and all the weird stuff that they are misquoting. So go ahead for that.
Okay, so really quickly, Endeavour is scheduled to come to LA right around September 20th. It's leaving KSC.
Kennedy Space Center.
Kennedy Space Center a couple of days prior to that. It's making its way through Houston. It is actually going through Northern California to get some really cool shots over Ames, because this is the last time, right? Might as well. And then is scheduled to appear at LAX around September 20th. And then it's going to hang out kind of right around LA for a little while, just to make sure everything is...
How's it going? Just hanging?
Yeah, right. There's a nice hangar there just to make sure everything is good and kosher. And then in early to mid-October, it's making its way over to the California Science Center. Not quite downtown LA, but it's right on the outskirts of the major city itself. and it's snaking its way through town. Because if you know anything about LA, LA is over here, and LAX is way over here, and it has to get from here to there, and it has to sort of snake through towns. And some of the big to-do about this is that, A, it's the first time that a shuttle's ever done this. They just don't make shuttles go through towns because they're so wide, they're so tall, it's dangerous for the shuttle, it's dangerous for the city itself, blah, blah, blah. And there's lots of obstacles in the way, like power lines and trees and whatnot. And the one thing that the media has really glommed onto for some unknown reason is that all of these trees are being cut down. And the deal is that there are some trees that are being cut down, but out of, I think it's close to 400 trees, 40 of them are being destroyed. 40. About 10% of the trees are being destroyed completely. The other trees are being relocated, okay? And then they're going to be replaced with approximately 800 brand new trees.
Well, so this is where I asked you, are they being replaced with, I know that the city doesn't want the same trees. They don't like that kind of tree in the city. So they're putting whatever model, brand, I don't know.
Species, it's a different kind of tree.
Whatever kind of tree they want, they're putting back in. But are they putting in saplings or are they putting in fully grown trees? Because I know like Disney World, like they'll just cart in a fully grown tree and drop it in its place and be like, boom, hey, you never saw that. So are they doing that, or are they putting in these teeny tiny trees? Because it's a huge difference.
Right. And I looked into information about that, and I don't know for sure. But a lot of these trees and this particular route that they're taking are areas that were already going to be under construction either soon or are already under construction. So some of these trees had to be removed regardless. And then the trees that are that are replacing the old trees are trees that the city really kind of wanted into their town. A lot of these trees are being donated and or paid for by the science center itself. And it's really quite remarkable.
So people are complaining because they're losing their trees, but they don't have all the information.
Right. Well, the media's like, they're cutting down all the trees in LA, and that's just not what's going on in any way, shape, or form.
So anyhow, look up. The link was on the screen, but there you go. More information, and it'll be awesome. It'll be
very cool.
We'll do our best to cover it.
About a day and a half because it's leaving from LA, and then it's actually making one little stop, and then it'll appear at the science center. The next day, so it should arrive like I think it's the 13th or something. But
and by the way, Atlantis, they're getting ready to put Atlantis at the Kennedy Space Center in a couple of months, so they're gearing up for that as well. So the Atlantis is considered the most valuable and honored shuttle of the entire fleet. For those who don't know, I know we were supposed to be going into a break like 5 minutes ago, but really quickly, I thought this was really cool. There's a Lincoln penny on Curiosity. It's a I don't want to say a throwback, but
it's a really cool penny. It's not just any penny. It was the first of its kind. It's got particular initials on it. It's the centennial of like Lincoln's birth. The thing is that a lot of times photographers will put something realistic like a penny in their shots just so you can get a good idea of
like a geologist will, right? So you put a coin in the shot so you can see how big the rock is.
So you have a frame of reference, as it were. And that was kind of part of the idea with this. But yeah, so it's a really cool story. Please go look it up. It's quote unquote the most expensive penny in the world.
Right. It's on Curiosity, so that penny is on Mars right now. Also, they MacGyvered the space station. They were, if you missed the story, there were some issues with the power on the space station, and then there were some metal shavings. They went out for an extravehicular activity or a spacewalk to try to fix it.
It was like a marathon.
8 hour, it was like an 8.5 hour EVA. I don't remember how long it took, but it was a long time. They couldn't get it because of these metal shavings, and they didn't have the tools on the space station, so they built one. They built a couple actually, and everyone's glomming onto, and we did too, the toothbrush. And they used a toothbrush, a can of compressed air.
Because they had to clean it out, and so that's what the issue was.
So I just thought that was funny that we have this $100 billion structure saved by a toothbrush.
You know what? We saved a rover on the moon once with duct tape, so you got to use what you got.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, our main topic, which is going to be politics, actually, which we've got the two presidential candidates here in the U.S. How do they stand on space? Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Look into her face, determination in her eyes. action, 'cause she's firewalking. She's firewalking. When it's hot, she keeps on moving. Through the heat, keeps on improving. Yeah, she's firewalking. She's firewalking to be free.
Microphones. Welcome back. Before we talk about our main topic, which is going to be presidential candidates and where they stand on space topics, there is some Space Up stuff happening, so we'll take like 60 seconds to talk about that really quick.
Yeah, so the one that's coming up really soon is Space Up Europe, which is the first Space Up outside of the US, so that makes it really interesting and really, really cool. They've got a ton of stuff already planned. It should be really, really exciting. I don't know if did we run that?
No, we're going to run it in the next break.
Okay. And it's a very, very cool thing. Apparently I'm drawing a blank now suddenly. But the nice thing is that the Space Up Europe is coming up, and then very soon after that in October, I believe it is, there's also a Space Up going on in Germany, and then locally here in the US, there's a Space Up, I believe it's Atlanta also going on.
It's gone viral! So for those who don't know,
it's
Space Up
crazy.
is an unconference. It's kind of like a regular conference, except nothing like that whatsoever. It's where you go in and everyone participates, and you can do your own presentation or you can participate in someone else's. But the neat thing about a Space Up is they're always current and they're always what you want to talk about, because if they're not, go up to the board and make a topic that you want to talk about. It's that simple. So we're huge fans of Space Ups, and they happen now all over the world, and so that's very exciting. Spaceup.org, I think.
Yep, it's spaceup.org, and that's the one thing I wanted to touch on really quickly is that we talked about Twist last week.
Yeah.
And they follow the ISS and give you little notifications via Twitter. And the guy who wrote the program is going to be at Space Up Europe.
Awesome.
I know.
There you go. All right, so our main topic today actually comes from a commenter on YouTube on our last episode, which was Yeoman45135. Hi to all Americans. Why, hello. I'm British, so we don't get much info on American politics. I call shenanigans. You have the internet too. Can some tell me, non-biased, which politician is more for space exploration, Obama or Romney? Thanks. So I will start off by saying non-bias is impossible. Everyone has bias, whether you want to or not. So we will try to give you both sides of the story, but there is some really great information. It's on a website. I didn't make a graphic for it.
It's
What
called
was I thinking?
sciencedebate.org.
I didn't make any graphics for this. I don't know what I was thinking. I'm sorry,
you
guys.
suck a whole lot.
Yeah.
It's sciencedebate.org, and the really great thing is that there were five or so questions, not questions necessarily posed to the different candidates.
I think it was more. It was
but
like,
there was a bunch of different topics talking about like fresh food and water, space exploration, science outreach, education. A bunch of these, these are sort of keystone topics for each candidate and things that they wanted to talk about. And somebody went through and took out all of their different answers from various times in the last couple of weeks, I believe it is, and then put them literally side by side. So number 12 is space.
Yep.
Quite literally, what did Barack Obama say about space and what did Mitt Romney say about space?
So let's talk about that for a moment. I'll do Barack Obama and you do Mitt Romney.
Sure.
If that's all right?
Yeah.
So Barack Obama said, we're fortunate to, this is where a graphic would have been nice.
Yeah.
We're fortunate to be a part of a society that can reach beyond our planet and explore frontiers that were only imagined by our ancestors. I'm committed to protecting these critical investments in science and technology and pursuing an ambitious new direction for NASA that lays the groundwork for a sustainable program of exploration and innovation. We've extended the life of the International Space Station, forwarding efforts to foster international cooperation in space, supporting the growth of America's commercial space industry, and taking on our pressing scientific challenges while continuing the nation's commitment to robust human space exploration, science, and aeronautics programs. That is a run-on sentence, Mr. President.
Okay, but there's like 5 more paragraphs, so we're not going to get into it. We're not going to read every single one of them because this will be like the whole rest of the show. Let's just put it that way. But then the other thing is that I think this is the issue, if you'll let me for a second,
Sure.
is that when you're running for president and you want to appeal to as many people as possible, you're going to say the nicest things about as many topics as you possibly can.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
And it's the really great thing about space as a topic in general is that most people don't disagree on it, I guess. There isn't like a political affiliation necessarily associated with space, I don't think. It's usually just comes down to whether or not you believe we should be putting money into space or not. But that doesn't seem to be aligned in any particular way, at least not that I have found. I've found plenty of people who associate themselves as Republican and plenty of people who associate themselves as Democrats within the space community, all agreeing this is something that we need to do. So oddly enough, when you go through and you read the actual points that Mitt Romney and Barack Obama have both said about space, they line up really closely with each other, I think.
So when I read them, I got this kind of general impression between the two. And certainly, sciencedebate.org, come to your own conclusions. Don't just take our word for it. And look up the information. As I was joking about in the comment, this information is all available online, right? You are capable of looking up anything you wanted to see. The thing is, right now, space, at this exact moment in time, is not a huge political issue that they're talking about.
Right.
Climate change is a bigger issue. I'm not saying for better or for worse. I'm just saying it's not a huge issue. So there's not a whole lot of, these are the exact steps I'm going to take. Generally speaking, though, President Obama has been moving more towards a commercialized space program, with NASA helping to seed these commercial companies. And you can see that to a certain extent with CCICAP, the Commercial Crew Development Program, COTS, the Commercial Transportation System. Now, having said that, not all of the funding has been there from the House and Senate. So while he kind of tries to want to do some of this stuff, he hasn't exactly gotten all the support he needs to do all of this stuff.
Right. The thing is that Mitt Romney, it's always easier for somebody who hasn't had the position of whatever it is to say, these are the things I'm going to do when I get there, without knowing for sure that you can actually do those things. So that's kind of an unfortunate thing. But the funny thing is that the things that he's saying are exactly the things that have literally come directly out of your mouth, saying that he wants to focus NASA, that just having, just willy-nilly dreams is not going to work, that if you have very specific goals and orientations for NASA, that is going to be a lot easier way to
But I read this differently. So you see, when you say something like he's going to focus NASA, that to me doesn't mean we're going to necessarily give NASA a mission. For example, going to the moon.
He said that almost exactly, but keep talking because I will find it.
All right, I view it as we're going to focus on rockets. We're going to focus on, making America the forefront of space and innovation again, which to me means we're not going to focus on a mission, we're going to focus on a product. We're going to focus on space launch system or building really big rockets, but without actually having a destination in mind.
Quote, "The current purpose and goals of the American space program are difficult to determine. With clear, decisive, and steadfast leadership, space can once again be an engine of technology and commerce. It can help strengthen America's entrepreneurial spirit and commercial competitiveness, launch new industries and new technologies, protect our security interests, and increase our knowledge." End quote, Mitt Romney.
Yes, but that didn't actually say that I'm going to create a mission. Say, look, we need to have NASA go to the moon in 10 years.
I'm just saying.
I understood that to be, we're going to have NASA, we're going to create a focused program. And that's fine, unless that focused program is a jobs program.
Yeah, no,
that's the problem is I don't know. I mean, maybe he's going to walk in here and say, look, we're going to Mars in 10 years. If he does that, bam, awesome.
The other issue is, and we've had this talk before, is that that's how short those goals have to be.
Oh, yes.
Because then Barack Obama is saying, like, hey, I want to get to an asteroid by 2025. I want to get to Mars in the 2030s.
Fail.
All of these different things. And the thing is, he's not going to be president at that time. There's no way he can guarantee that that's going to keep on going like that. He can set whatever he wants in stone, and then somebody else is going to come by and chisel that away anyhow.
Someone would argue that 10 years is too long then, too, because he's still not going to be president. However, 8 years into it, you're going to be so far along, it's going to be very difficult. assuming you're ready to go, right? Assuming you're not still in the infancy stages. 8 years into the program of a 10-year program, it's going to be very hard for the next president to come in here and be like, no, I realize we've already launched all of these missions and everyone's behind this program, but you're not actually going to send humans to Mars.
Right.
So 10 years is kind of that, 10 years or less is that magic marker, in my opinion, that whatever president it is needs to do. Now, The advantage of Barack Obama is that we've kind of seen where he wants to go over the last 4 years. So we're drawing from the past to create.
But then he only has
conclusions
4
of the
more
future.
years to go.
Correct, but if he continues down this road, potentially he's probably going to be more in favor of commercial space. Mitt Romney, we really don't know. I mean, we're taking his words, and you and I are interpreting the exact same thing completely differently, right? And they're the same words, and it's interesting that that's happening that way. So. That's I think where a good chunk of it's at is we really don't know, but we really want them to. What's really interesting is that both science is actually on the table, and we're not getting this whole.
And nobody seems to be poo-pooing these ideas at all.
Yeah,
nobody
absolutely.
seems to be saying, "Oh, space. Why are we even talking about that?"
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a good problem for us to have that there are paragraphs upon paragraphs upon paragraphs that each candidate has laid out for us to sort of nitpick, I guess.
So at this point, we'd like to know your opinions. So go ahead, go over to spacedebate.org, and then it's actually /debate12, and it's question number 12. I started reading Obama's answer, but you're totally right. It's like pages of stuff, so that would not have worked. I should have built a graphic. I'm sorry, guys. We want to know what you think. Leave your comments on YouTube, Facebook. Actually, my favorite comments from last week's show were on Google+. That was an interesting conversation. And we'll actually talk about your comments here on the show. In fact, our next segment when we come back from break will be viewer comments from last week's show. We'd like to know what you think. Where do you think each president stands? Now, here's the thing with politics. People get so passionate. Like, it has to be Republican. It has to be Democrat. This is the right way. This is my guy. And, we appreciate your passion, but let's not turn that into insults. Let's not start flame wars against each other, and understand that everyone's opinion is valid. And yes, I do mean everyone's. And people will have differing opinions, and that's okay. The correct answer isn't far left, and the correct answer isn't far right. It's somewhere in the middle. So as long as we're willing to learn from other people, it's awesome. I realize it's probably going to turn into just a total mess on YouTube, but that's YouTube. So
I like how already in the chat room people are like Zubrin Sagan, Von Braun O'Neill.
Von Braun 12.
I've also seen Nye and DeGrasse Tyson as a bill. I think that's
so. Yeah, what do you think? Not necessarily who you're going to vote for, but who do you think? What do you think each side of the political race is going to do? And for those of you across the rest of the world going, well, this doesn't impact me, actually it does. NASA is larger than the rest of the U.S. space. The rest of the worldwide non-military space programs combined. So they don't even equal the rest of the world's space programs that are not military. Do not even equal just NASA. So. NASA has a bit of momentum worldwide. They have a bit of sway, and a lot of the programs they do impact all of humanity. So this does impact absolutely everyone. You may not be able to vote, but maybe you can offer some insight that we didn't otherwise know. So we value your opinions as well. On that note, let's take a quick break. And we were talking about comments from last week's show. So when we come back, we're going to talk about everything that you guys said and how wrong and how much you hated me. From YouTube, Google+, Facebook, so forth and so on.
It's my favorite part.
Absolutely. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Mohawk Guy 2024. That's what we saw in the chat room. That's hilarious.
Super awesome. He actually did some DJing over on Third Rock Radio, and it was such a popular segment that they replayed it.
That's awesome.
It's very cool.
All right. So last week's show was about who should be interested in space? The concept being maybe it's not appropriate to get absolutely everyone interested in the cosmos and space because they'll be interested but they won't educate themselves, or
Right.
maybe they'll make some really bad decisions, or whatever that may be. And so as I mentioned, we love your video comments. Those are our absolute favorite. If you want to be guaranteed a spot on the show, video comment
Because
on
only
YouTube.
like one person does one.
I
so
know.
We're guaranteed
well,
to
no,
put
one
you
week we had like
on.
3 or 4, and it was great. So
That
leave your
was
video
really
comments.
cool.
Like, just it doesn't have to be this long edited thing. Just 1 minute in front of a camera. Boom, do your thing. No special effects, no graphics. Just boom, a minute. Let us know what you think. We love those. So here's our first comment from Chris Radcliffe.
Hi, Spacevidcast. So this week's question was, who should be interested in the cosmos? I'm going to go a little against the grain on this, and I'm going to say, not everyone. I don't really think that that's necessarily a question that should have a should in it. A lot of people are interested in space. Enough people that you can make a big budget movie like Star Trek or Prometheus. I don't really think that that's the problem. I don't think that there are too few people interested in space or the wrong people interested in space. How about who should get involved in space? All of those people who watched Curiosity Land and got very excited and said, why aren't we doing more of this? There was nothing for them to do. Well, yes, there are some things for them to get involved in, but do they know about them? Does everybody know who wants to get involved, how to get involved? So I guess I'll answer your question with a question. How do we find ways for the people who are interested in space to get involved in space and help move everything forward? Thanks.
So he brings up a valid point. Maybe the question actually was wrong. And what's interesting is that he then posted that exact same question on Google Plus, because we had a conversation going over there, and some of the commenters. Yes, go ahead.
I also like that he was wearing his rocket surgeon shirt while answering.
And those books were not a set. That actually is what it looks like in his living room. That's for realsies. When you walk in, that is a small subset of his library. Yeah.
Very cool. Sorry, go on.
So on Google Plus, we had this comment. I agree there, Chris. When NASA has a public approval rating that never falls below 70%, is there really a problem here to fix? I'm quite glad that there are other people obsessed with all the different aspects of life, and that's from Tim as well. I think just conceptually, Chris was right. I think the question was wrong, and we shouldn't have said should. It's more along the lines of what can we do to get those people who are inspired about space? Where can we guide them, and where can we
do something
and continue their passion and keep that flowing? And I would like to say, egotistically, if I may, the Spacevidcast is one good outlet for that, because you can participate live, you can talk with other space geeks, and you can have fun. But there's something to be said for building stuff, and that actually where as much guff as I give the maker community, I think that actually is where maker community comes into play. So I think maybe what we should do on Spacevidcast, and we'll talk about this in After Dark, and please leave your comments. Maybe we should do something each week where it's like, here are different things you can do in space. Like, here's something you can do at home with your kids or by yourself, and kind of maybe have some that are really easy and some that are a little more complex, that you kind of build yourself up to. But I think that might be a fun thing. So let me know what you think about that. Maybe that's a good idea, maybe it's a bad idea, and then I need ideas too. So all right. This one's from YouTube. I had to put this one in here because it's freaking hilarious. I beg your indulgence to consider that we aren't comparing apples to oranges. We're comparing fruit stands, and while China's oranges, and by the way, this is in relation to comparing China's space program to the U.S. space program. And while China's oranges are approaching our oranges, I don't see any apples on that stand. Meanwhile, we have apples on Mars, apples on their way to Pluto, and a couple of other apples leaving the solar system. Now, I love oranges. They are my favorite fruit, but apples are nothing to sneeze at. I made a metaphor maze.
Yes, you did.
Yes, you did. I have no comment outside of, it was so funny, and it was voted up so many times on YouTube, I had to actually air it in the show.
It's a pretty awesome
It was
comment.
required. That was a pretty awesome comment. It didn't have a real point, but it was awesome. I mean, maybe it did, but
I think it did.
And you're right. Oh, that was a nice freeze frame
It
for a
was
moment.
really awesome.
This was on our Google Plus page, and Yeah, it's actually quite simple sounding. The concept, Teal had originally commented saying everyone should be interested in space, and I wrote back saying, well, I don't think it's that simple.
Right.
Teal wrote back, yeah, it's actually quite simple sounding, but complex question. The two options you outline are both possible, depending on if the approach is from the top down, leaders influencing the people, or bottom up, people pressuring the leaders. And I thought that was a really interesting concept of, who is going to be interested in space? Is it going to come from our president saying, look, this is a big, huge thing. We're going to go to the moon. We're going to go to Mars. We're going to do these things,
Right.
and we're going to do them in 10 years. Or is it the president influencing the people saying, why aren't we on the moon? Why aren't we on Mars?
The president.
Exactly. Is that what? Whatever the words
Right.
were supposed to be, use those instead.
Well, and Teal goes on to say a little bit like maybe it's going to be a combination of both. And I think that it is going to be a combination of both to a certain extent. Unfortunately, it is always the squeaky wheel that gets the grease. So if that's really an opinion that you have and you feel very strongly about it, you should be letting your leaders know that this is something you feel very strongly about and you want to see more of. Just saying, well, that really sucks, and then not voting or not writing in or voting in the wrong people because you're a hipster and you're doing things ironically is totally not going to get you to the point where you want things to be. You have to, really align yourself, really figure out the things that you are interested in and how strongly you feel about it, and then go forward with those ideas. Just sitting back and complaining about it isn't going to get anything done.
Two interesting comments in the live chat room that just occurred. Jim Noble says, I've seen presidents announcing space programs for quite a few years now and have not been impressed with the results. And I think that's valid. It started with George W. Bush doing the Constellation program. He's the one who canceled the shuttle, not Obama. Let's remember that. Not that it matters, but people blame the wrong people for anything. But he canceled the space shuttle and he started Constellation. Now Constellation was supposed to bring us back to the moon, onto Mars and beyond, but he never funded it. So then Obama came in and he continued with the space shuttle cancellation. So it actually ended in he didn't bring it back. But then he also canceled Constellation. Then he said, we're going to do private space flight. But then the funding for that kind of got cut by the House and Senate as well. So all these programs, they kind of come up with these good intentions, but then they're never really executed on correctly.
Right. Well, we've talked about this before, that, if NASA was left to kind of do its own thing, just have enough funding to do what it wanted to do, and was able to do it, that they would probably do some amazing things, as long as they weren't under this crazy dictatorship of, yes, but you have to use these parts, you have to use this fuel, you have to, these
Right.
sorts of requirements, which are just really kind of ridiculous.
The second interesting comment I saw was from Helldesk, which is, there's no space Cold War, so no space race. And I wonder if that is actually true, or are we in the beginning of a new space race with China? I don't know yet. It's hard to tell. It feels like that might be starting, but it might not be starting. So,
as soon as they get their oranges to match our apples.
Oh man, that made my head spin is what that did. So last week you had talked about spin-off technologies, and I immediately
Yes.
jumped down your thing. Rah, spin-off technology.
Because you always do that.
I
with
do.
Any
I know. I
opinion
totally
that
do.
I have.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah,
I
every
know.
time. So Bill says again with ragging on spin-offs. You should listen to your wife more, Ben. I think you would agree with that.
I always agree with that.
Okay, NASA's geeky science missions are like the things you get to know about a girl after you met her and get to know her, like what's in her head.
Really? Do you need me to read this?
Yes,
story?
apparently
Because
I do. Yeah, read this.
All right, so NASA spin-offs are like the things you see about her from across the park, rumor park. The spin-offs catch folks' attention and answer the questions, what's in it for me? Do not deny that most folks look mostly at shallow and selfish considerations first.
Okay, I don't deny any of that. And I'm not saying that the spin-offs that actually occur are unimportant. I'm saying that funding a program for spin-off technology that you don't know what it will be, that's wrong. So I'm not saying no spin-offs, and I'm not saying don't market the spin-offs. What I'm saying is you shouldn't develop a program saying, well, there's no point to the mission, but look at these great spin-offs that we may or may not have.
And I don't think there's a single scientist out there in the universe who's like, yeah, whatever, Hubble. But hey, breast cancer! I don't think anybody's actually saying
No,
that.
they do that. They totally,
No,
that's
I don't-
how a lot of
I-
people try
no.
to justify space, is this spin-offs. And I don't think that's a justifiable thing.
I'm not using it as a justifiable case. I'm just saying that for the average, 15-year-old football player who doesn't care, but you say, hey, actually one of the spin-off technologies from NASA is the padding inside of your helmet so that you don't die, then that gets them interested immediately.
But for the... All right. So, Ben may be right here. Now, Mr. the Pablo Sanchez, I like you already. It's the politicians, referring to the U.S. Until there's an obvious economic prosperity and general national stability, let's say that like okay, you need to read these from now on, apparently.
Let's say that like the decades following the World War II, there won't be a political election riding on the space issue. This is probably what the next 15 to 20 years will be like. Hopefully, the private sector can keep the torch burning for the time being. Just an opinion. Great show, guys.
So basically saying that there isn't anything, right? We've become bored with space. It's a thing. It just happens. We take it for granted, right?
I think a lot of people do, but kind of talking about the WW2 sort of thing, or just the general Cold War space race issue, is that one of the reasons that we were so motivated to do is because we were in such, head-to-head sort of combat with an entire another country. And so, like you said, maybe if China just steps up a little bit, maybe the U.S. is going to say, wow, I guess we are kind of lagging behind a little bit. Maybe
come on, China, step it up.
Yeah, go China for go U.S.
The problem NASA has to face is politicians. Politicians always go for waste of money over time-consuming and impractical. It's not NASA that is creating bad designs. It's politicians demanding designs that are financially unrealistic. If NASA were to get away from the bureaucrats, the problem would go away overnight. That's the problem with government funding, and you have to deal with the politics and politicians. None if NASA is a part of. None if which NASA... Yeah, that sentence makes no sense. That last sentence. I was up with you until the last sentence there. So, yes, I've thought about this a lot. Certainly, politicians shouldn't be telling NASA that you need to use solid fuel. And we know why the politicians do that. They're saving jobs in their district, and that gets them reelected. Look at how great I did. And then, of course, the entire program suffers, and then the program gets canceled because they save jobs in the district, which ends up losing more jobs in the district than they were. So it's like this really short-term vision that these politicians have, which is by design, right? They only have to get elected, every 2 to 4 years or 6 years or whatever it is, whichever branch they're in. So 2, 4, 6. So yeah, that's fundamentally the problem. However, the flip side of this is, let's just say NASA itself were privatized. Where the heck is the money going to come from? That's $20 billion a year that they need to come up with. Yeah, I just don't. There is a certain advantage to be linked to the government where they don't have to turn a profit, right?
Right.
They don't have to do a bunch of different things, and yeah. So.
Oh wow.
Finally, Silly Dogification, which is an awesome screen name,
yes, it is,
says, I think a craft from a private company would be far more successful. Not that private industry are any smarter than NASA. It's that NASA's goals keep changing. A privately financed shuttle would be better because the company doing the financing wouldn't compromise the design just to get something to fly. They would keep very tight control on operational costs. What's the point of building a giant spaceship if you can't afford to actually fly it? NASA doesn't care about operational costs. True and false. NASA itself actually does care about operational costs and has testified saying, look, the Space Launch System is way too expensive. We won't be able to afford to fly it. The House and Senate have said, we don't care. It is law. You must build it.
The interesting thing is that this is people's main gripe for Virgin Galactic, right? Like, what's Virgin Galactic doing? When are they going to fly? What's going on? And Virgin keeps saying, hey, we're going to fly when it's safe to fly. Okay? That's the way it's going to go. And so I find that really interesting.
It's also hard because if Virgin doesn't fly, they don't make money.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the flip side of this is a privatized company is incentivized to make money, whereas government is not.
Right.
And when you're incentivized to make money, safety, it is possible for safety to be thrown on the back burner. Now, I'm not saying that anyone is doing that. I'm just saying that that is something that could happen.
Okay.
So it's more difficult in that regard.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
Sure.
So, there are pros and cons to all of these approaches. One isn't the ultimate answer to everything. I think it's a blend of all of this stuff is what will actually get us on Mars or beyond, right? It doesn't have to be Mars. It can be some other place too. Yeah, so those are our comments, the kind of ones that stuck out from last week. Last week's show on YouTube devolved into a UFO thing. I'd like to remind Space Vidcasters that when we have people talking about UFOs, just simply ignore them. Don't comment. Don't. Oh, did you not see that? Pages and pages and pages of
The
UFO
sickness.
Oh,
and it just...
pages of this stuff. Guys, just don't comment. Do not. And then what happens is the troll is not fed any food. It starves and it goes somewhere else where it can find food, which isn't our channel.
Sounds like an After Dark conversation.
Please do not comment on the UFO conversations and stuff like that. So on that note, thank you everyone so much for watching. We'd love to hear your comments. Leave them on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Google+, wherever you want. It's a lot of fun talking with you guys. You guys are what make the show awesome. And of course, join us live right here at spacevidcast.com/live every Saturday at 2100 Coordinated Universal Time. That's 2 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And finally, we're about to go into Spacevidcast After Dark. That is a completely and totally unscripted show with, we're just going to lean back and talk to you guys casually. It's a lot of fun. And if you're watching live, continue to watch. You're going to get After Dark. Otherwise, if you're watching on demand, you can subscribe to Space Vidcast Epic. That's enhanced productions, interviews, and content, and After Dark is part of that. It starts at $8.33 a month if you buy it in a year-long package, or it's just $10 a month. And it's what helps us produce Space Vidcast week after week. In addition to these shows, we also do AIAA meetings, LA Space Salons, and whatever space content we can get our hands on. And your Space Vidcast Epic account helps us to continue to produce those shows, and will hopefully help us get a better camera so that it doesn't look quite like this. On that note, I'd like to thank everyone so much for watching, and when I click on the button, when I find the button to click on, we'll see you next week.
Correction that we did not throttle back. The roll program is complete. Coming up on max Q, body rates continue to look good. Max Q.
So all right, as they mentioned in the chat room, and I was actually going to bring this up, they're too cool to do a full countdown launch.
Yeah.
Probably a copyright issue on using all of the numbers in the copyright.
I just figured that people were just so bored they fell asleep.
So
because even the announcer's like, what? Yes, so it's launched. It's good.
So I don't know if it was NASA that was doing the countdown or United Launch Alliance, but I implore you, it's like the most interesting, it's like the part where you're on the edge of your seat. You can fill in the gaps. You are capable of counting one number per second. I know this because everyone else does it. I ask you kindly, please use all the numbers. All right, that should be the topic. That will be the title of this episode. Please use all the numbers. All right. That aside, it was a nice, clean launch. It was there were a couple. It was like the third launch attempt. It scrubbed a couple times. This is for some satellites that are going to go up. They're going to be looking at the radiation through the Van Allen belts, looking at the sun's influence here on the Earth.
Which are located where? The Van Allen belt.
They're.
I mean, they're in space, but I mean, they're between
Earth and the Moon.
Okay.
Was that important?
I figure some people don't know.
Oh, I just kind of maybe I incorrectly assumed. Our stuff takes weeks, and I have yet to find the person to talk to at YouTube. So, point of this is, if you really want to see these episodes in a timely fashion, go to spacevidcast.com. We'll have them posted like right away, right there. We always have, as best we could. If you really want to watch them on YouTube, that's awesome, that's fine. You know, just hit the subscribe button that's over here somewhere, whatever it is. And the more subscribers we have, the more pull we have with YouTube. And hopefully, if we can get enough subscribers, when we have copyright claims that are wrong, we can call up YouTube and be like, dude, we have 4.5 kajillion subscribers, clear this copyright claim right now. And they'll still say, no, F off. So, all right. So there's my quick little YouTube note. Let's get into space news. There was an Atlas V launch that was carrying the twin radiation belt storm probes. And since we're a space show, we'll show you the launch really quickly, and then we'll talk about the probes. So here you go.
10, 5, Release.
Lift off the Atlas V rocket and twin spacecraft on a mission to unlock the mysteries of Earth's Van Allen belts.
Booster engine continues to perform well. Pump speeds within parameters. Injector pressures are stable.
But people knew what the Van Allen belts were, right? Even the UFO conspiracists or the non-landing conspiracists used the Van Allen belts as like proof, whatever it is. So here's another really cool thing that's coming up. Well, I guess it already happened. So
Yeah.
well, it's leading. You talk about it. I'm just screwing this up.
Wow. Okay. So SpaceX recently had what's called a wet dress rehearsal, or wet dress for short, because apparently rehearsal is just entirely too long to enunciate. And what that is there is a launch coming up scheduled for early October for SpaceX, and a wet dress rehearsal is getting the vehicle basically together for the most part, making sure it's got all of its liquids, which is why they call it wet dress. So they fuel it up and they set it up as if they were going to launch. It may not be 100% thoroughly the vehicle put all together. What am I trying to say here? This is what happens when you're on Dayquil. It has enough of the elements that are in place to help verify that the rocket is ready to go. And then they light it up and they hold it for a couple of seconds to make sure that there aren't any issues, making sure that everything is working properly, it's all connected, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, when you say light it up, the engines never fire.
Oh, I thought they did.
No, they do not fire.
I'm so sorry.
No.
Really?
No firing of engines on a wet dress.
Okay. Apparently I'm really, really wrong, but it's a test thereof.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Anyhow, SpaceX had one. Because they have a scheduled launch in October. And so it's one of those steps that everyone goes through, or at least...
Dragon deploy verified.
Welcome to Spacevidcast 5.14 for September 8th, 2012. My name is Benjamin Higginbotham. With me, as always, the beautiful, lovely, wonderful, and talented Carrie Ann Higginbotham. Now, normally we get straight into space news because I know you guys have just watched like a 500-minute open. We really need to make that shorter, don't we? By like most of it. But I did want to say one quick thing. If you've been watching our shows on YouTube, you'll note that sometimes they're delayed for weeks and weeks and weeks. This is not our fault. We post them to YouTube right away.
Right.
The problem is that YouTube has this new automatic copyright system that does not work. Straight up, it says that, like, for example, a couple shows ago, The Ellen Show had copyright on our show, and there was nothing in our show that was aired on Ellen. So, and I don't blame The Ellen Show for that. That's obviously an automated YouTube problem. So, with the help of Spacevidcaster Pete Reset, hopefully I'm pronouncing his last name right. I guess I never asked how it's really pronounced. We have implemented blip.tv support on Spacevidcast. The beautiful thing about Blip is it doesn't have the same copyright issue. So we can still upload our episodes, and you'll have them right away. So we're not going to stop uploading to YouTube. We're going to continue uploading there. However, there may be times when our episodes are delayed by 3+ weeks simply because YouTube decided to mark them as copyright infringement, and we're waiting for them to clear the copyright. Understand, we're not the only ones that have this issue. It happened to the Curiosity video that NASA posted as well, but there's a big difference between NASA and us. NASA was able to get the copyright cleared within an hour.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.